No amount of money would be enough to take away the trauma that this family dealt with. A doctor she once looked up to like a father had completely violated her trust because nothing could have possibly prepared her for what her doctor did. It really was just the epitome of what was the reason. In 1996, dentist Liana Gedz would meet oral surgeon Robert Galil at a dental conference in New York. Liana was a proud Jew, born and raised in Russia. However, in 1990, her and her family would flee from Russia, becoming political refugees in the USA in hopes of living a safe and better life. Similarly, Robert was also a political refugee as well. Born as a Jew in Iran, he fled his native country in 1979 alongside his brother when they were just 11 and 13 years old. They made it to Germany and then finally to the USA, where they would shortly be joined by their parents. With so much in common, a 27-year-old Liana and a 30-year-old Robert would meet at this dental conference and immediately know it was love at first sight. It would be only a year after they met when they would get married, and just 10 days after the wedding when Liana would announce that she's pregnant. What was looking to be a hopeful start of a loving young family was ultimately shattered in May 1998 when, after 8 months of pregnancy, Liana would give birth to a stillborn baby girl. As she held her lifeless baby, she would realize that was the first time she's actually ever held an infant. This moment was absolutely devastating for her, and Liana would soon fall into a deep depression. It was at this point a friend would offer a solution they thought to be helpful at the time. The friend would introduce the couple to Dr. Allan Zarkin, a well-renowned obstetrician in the Manhattan area. It would be at this meeting Dr. Zarkin would promise to guarantee Liana a baby. And so after having her start on a fertility pill called Clomid, Liana would soon become pregnant again, this time hopeful for a healthy birth. All was going well, things were looking up for the couple. However, it would unfortunately be only 8 weeks when Liana would yet again suffer another miscarriage. Liana was distraught. There was nothing more that she wanted than to finally give birth to a healthy baby. Just as she nearly fell back into a dark spiral, Dr. Zarkin did everything in his willpower to keep her in a mentally right state. He was fully there for her. He would call her regularly and check up on her, and he was determined for her to get pregnant and give birth to a healthy child. This would ultimately give Liana hope, and she was absolutely more than ready to try again with this pregnancy. And just about 1 month after her miscarriage, and without the help of fertility drugs, a now 31-year-old Liana had become pregnant again. With all the hope presented by Zarkin, she was excited and ready for her journey. It would be the next 7 months where Zarkin would coach Liana through prenatal care, and this strong doctor-patient bond would eventually blossom into an amazing friendship. Throughout that 1999 summer, Liana and Robert would often invite Zarkin to a restaurant for dinner, or they would invite them to their country home in Long Island and just enjoy their time together. This relationship started to strongly build as the group would regularly meet up 2 to 3 times a week and just spend time with each other. Zarkin definitely had interestingly noticeable tendencies throughout these interactions. He was flamboyant, and he would often have an effusive, boisterous manner. He would boast about some sexual encounters, and he would even talk about stories involving patients. It was a little weird, but the couple was able to look past these questionable comments as they were just elated with his dedication to their successful pregnancy, despite his crazy comments. And so it would be 24 weeks later when Liana would be admitted to the Beth Israel Medical Center Hospital in New York City after she went into a premature labor. She would stay at the hospital for the next 2.5 months when on Tuesday, September 7th, 1999, 6 weeks before her due date, there was some issues. The baby went into distress, and Zarkin had to perform an emergency C-section. And so she is now met by her Dr. Zarkin, her mother, 2 nurses, a resident, and anesthesiologist, an assistant, and they would get her sedated and further prepared for her baby girl's delivery. So they're filled in this crowded operating room. Zarkin's performing the operation, and to their hope, he successfully delivers Liana's baby girl, Emma, 6 weeks premature, bluish in color, and just weighing 4 pounds and 11 ounces, but nonetheless healthy and well. Shortly after, a sedated Liana would begin waking up and is just extremely elated and excited to finally meet her daughter. She had spent the past couple of years trying her hardest to give birth, and finally, here lay her healthy and alive baby girl right in front of her. Despite the excitement, Liana couldn't help but notice this very strange feeling. She of course had endured a lot having to do with surgery, but she just felt this very strong pain around her abdomen. This pain would obviously make Liana feel nervous. Here she was, after already suffering 2 miscarriages and finally giving birth, but through an emergency C-section. She couldn't help but be concerned that something was wrong. And just adding to this strange feeling, she would be completely taken back by her care team, because it seemed almost as if everyone and all the hospital staff was just eager to take a peek under her bandages where the procedure occurred. What was happening that has everyone's head turning and making her seem like she's this spectacle? It would be Thursday, September 9th, when Dr. Zarkin would walk into her room alongside the hospital's chairman of obstetrics, Dr. Daniel Saltzman. They both would walk in the room, and Dr. Saltzman would just ominously tell her, "I know what happened in the operating room. I came to see that." At this point, Liana's just caught off guard. She has no idea what he's talking about and frantically demands to see what. So she would turn to her husband, insisting that he gives her a mirror immediately, to which he reluctantly complied. He just wanted to protect her peace of mind. So Robert hands Liana this small mirror, to which she would subsequently lift towards her stomach. And when she would look down at her abdomen, she would be absolutely mortified at the sight she saw. Because when she would look at that reflection, Liana would see puffy, red, swollen, torn, and infected flesh. Zarkin had used a scalpel to carve into her abdomen the unmistakable letters A.Z. Allan Zarkin. The horrible letters standing at 3 inches high and 1.5 inches wide. It all started to click for her at this moment. Everyone in the operating room knew what happened. However, it all happened way too fast. There was no time for Robert or Liana's mother to do anything to stop this heinous event. Robert knew all his wife had gone through to reach this moment, and all he had in his mind was to get his newborn daughter back home stress-free and safely, and worry about this when they had the time to. Their fate was up to the hands of Zarkin and the hospital staff. What was even more disturbing was a laugh erupted by the resident doctor during the time of the carving. Mortified, Liana would ask Zarkin, "Why would you do this to me?" When suddenly he would lash out, replying, "After the way I took care of you, I don't have to give you any effing explanation." He would then immediately storm out the room after being so hostile. Liana at this point was just caught off guard. She was obviously thankful that she finally was able to deliver a healthy baby through the help of Zarkin, but this gave him no right to essentially maim her. He had this superiority complex that without him, none of this would have happened. And this behavior was just absurd. Zarkin would subsequently be suspended from the Beth Israel Hospital that same day and would later resign. He would also be fired from a practice he worked at after his partners had discovered what had happened. However, trouble for Liana and her family would not take a halt right then and there. It was discovered that shortly after Emma was born, Zarkin had attempted to remove a breathing tube from her face, only being stopped by being physically restrained by a nurse. none of this had been reported to the hospital. This allowed a dismissed Zarkin to still keep his medical license and subsequently get hired by an abortion clinic. To add insult to the injury, in an attempt to protect Zarkin, Dr. Saltzman would try to get the couple to sign documents absolving Zarkin of blame for the carving, to which they would decline. And so just 2 months after this traumatic incident, on November 8th, 1999, a lawsuit would be filed against the hospital, Zarkin, and Zarkin's medical team. Liana and Robert had requested $5.5 million, and it was around this time Zarkin would be fired from the Queen's Clinic once they had discovered the carving incident and the lawsuit that resulted from it. Zarkin and his defense team would argue that his role in this incident was as a result of Pick's disease, a rare permanent form of dementia similar to Alzheimer's, but instead affecting only certain areas of the brain. It was due to this brain disorder that Zarkin did not know that in the moment he was acting in such a bizarre way, and that he otherwise would not have been able to control what he did. But the prosecution countered this claim. This was a heinous assault committed, and the attempt to cover it up by the Beth Israel Hospital just added more insult to the injury. They were negligent and hadn't looked into previous complaints against Zarkin for numerous examples of lewd comments and inappropriate behavior while working at the hospital. Things have been filed against him, but they didn't take any action to fix that. And so the state health department would fine the Beth Israel Hospital $14,000 and order the facility to clean up their act. Despite all that had happened to the young family, the last thing Liana and Robert had hoped for was to see Zarkin locked up behind bars. They didn't see him as a danger to society and only deemed him dangerous if given the opportunity to continue practicing as a physician. They thought if they truly wanted to help him, placing him in a psychiatric ward would probably be the best option to not only potentially rehabilitate him, but to save this from happening to another family. In the end, Zarkin accepted a plea deal for second-degree assault, avoiding facing any prison time and instead being barred from applying for a medical license for 5 years. Liana would also settle the $5.5 million lawsuit against the hospital for $1.75 million. Liana would continue to deal with the trauma from this incident. She's left with either dealing with this painful scar or countless plastic surgery visits in attempts to remove this thing that is now in her abdomen. She would go on to face paralyzing fear and overall discomfort in her own body. However, despite this situation, Liana just wanted to put the situation behind her, and they were just happy to have given birth to a healthy young girl, Emma. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about this story and subscribe so you don't miss any other bizarre medical malpractice cases. Bye now.